All righty. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Mission Driven Made podcast. We have a very special guest, so make sure, as always, you stay until the end. Our guest went through one of the toughest training and leadership courses in the United States military, Army Ranger School. Army Rangers are the Army's premier direct action raid force and are known for their physical capabilities and mental toughness. I cannot wait to dive headfirst into this. I want to welcome Alex Argumedo to the Mission Driven Made podcast, where our community inspires people to pursue health, wealth, and purpose in their life. Thank you for being on the show, Alex.
Yeah, hey, thank you for inviting me on. I appreciate it. I was happy to hear from you. So it's good all the way around.
Awesome, man. Great to have you here. So we'll dive right in. So whenever I talk to people that are successful, I'm always so interested in their upbringing and how you got to where you are. So can you kind of tell us a bit about your upbringing?
Yeah, it's yeah, I think that's a good thing that you brought up that question by itself, right? And that interest in how someone came to be, from A to B, where they got, to. I grew up, my parents were both from part of East LA that's, pretty poor. So we kind of grew up in the projects. And even when my parents moved out of there, my family, my grandmother and my uncles were all there. So we were still there. And I went to school in that area. And while I may have been going to a Catholic school, it was right across the street from the projects. So,
Yeah.
The kids that live there, I grew up in that environment, and I'm glad I did. It was a lot of like heartache at times and a lot of struggle, but I think early on it was important that I gained that perspective.
Yeah.
And I think it offered a lot of early adversity that was like healthy for me, and maybe not so healthy, but nevertheless, I'm glad I went through it. So yeah, that's where we started. And both my parents worked really hard to get us out of there. And when we got out of there, we ended up in another suburb of East LA called El Sereno, which was not as bad, but still had some of that, criminal element that in the 80s, it was pretty crazy. That was the era of the drive-by and a lot of early gang on gang violence in the streets. It was pretty bad. So just grew up amongst it. I don't really remember it as being as bad unless I reflect on it now from a healthier perspective. But, I've seen my uncle get shot. I've seen guys get stabbed in front of my school. So when I think about that, right, like now I'm going like, oh, that's interesting. That's a big difference. So yeah, it just seemed normal, I guess, at the time when you're in that element.
Oh my gosh. I just can't even imagine. And how did you, I guess you can say, withstand all the stuff that was going on in that environment? Because, a lot of people succumb to that.
I think it was really family, right? While my family some of them may have not been making the right decisions and others were, they both had the same message. Hey, don't do this. And my dad was real adamant about telling me every day, like, hey, if you join a gang, I'm going to kick your butt every day. Like, it's going to be brutal for you. And he just knew, like, he avoided gangs by joining boxing. So while he may have been you can't avoid it in those areas. So you hang around with people that are from gangs, or you're mingling with them.
Yeah.
But you can avoid being a part of it by being like, hey, I'm an athlete. Like, I can't do that. I can't risk my scholarship. And for him, he was slotted to go to the Olympics for boxing. So everybody was kind of more, hey, Hugo's going to be a boxer. Like, leave him alone. He's not going to do this, So, right away it was his way out, and then he kind of made sure I didn't get involved. So, it didn't matter. I learned how to run very fast early on, because that's kind of what you have to do. I mean, anyone that tells you otherwise, like, if you're going to get jumped, it's best to run, and the days that I didn't, I learned how to take a beating. I mean, that's just something that happens, but, yeah, I think that was the best way. I think my family really early on put an emphasis on education. They celebrated me whenever I did something well. They made an effort to be there for things that, like, big accomplishments. And then they were like very adamant about not having me around certain elements. So they kept me in sports, or they kept me in activities for like scholastic stuff. So I was like, okay, and that kind of balanced it out. But more than anything, I think it was the confidence, right? Like, if your parents are happy that you're doing something, when you're a kid, you want to continue to make them happy,
Right. Yeah. What was your sport?
So at the time I played football there, which was like, it's funny because back in those days, like early on, I remember when I was younger, like gangs used to play football to settle beefs, you know, and then it would always end up in a fight and they'd fight. So like football was pretty big. We'd all play football. And then I did, early on, I was in like track and basketball. And then in high school, track just followed me. I did cross country. And I don't know, I fell in love with it, which later on I'll explain, like, you know,
Yeah.
That's how it contributed to, I believe, my success in some of the more difficult phases of Ranger School where it's just you in your mind.
Yeah. You were a cornerback, I bet, in football, weren't you? Being so fast.
I tried. No? I tried, but I couldn't. I was a wide receiver and then and believe it or not, a center. Nice. I think it was because a couple of the guys we had were afraid of like getting hit. And so I just knew how to snap the ball without rushing it. I got crushed a lot, but
yeah. Well, wide receiver, that might be the second fastest position on the field after corner, arguably. Yeah.
Right.
So awesome. And when did the thought of special forces come into play with all of this?
So, like, again, I take it back to the 80s, right? Growing up in the 80s, I used to watch G.I. Joe regularly. And like I collected all the figures. I had them all set up in my little G.I. Joe case. And so it's just what I played a lot. And it was something that was often in my mind. And it was like from a young age, like, what did you want to be? And I was like, oh, I want to be a soldier, you know? I had no concept of special operations. I just knew I wanted to be, I've even said, like, I want to be G.I. Joe, you know, I want to be G.I. Joe. So it was always in the back of my mind. And then as I got older, I remember talking to my dad and it's, I don't know, it's just, you know, sometimes you have like certain memories of just one conversation. I'm sure we had tons, but this one stuck with me for whatever reason. He had kind of mentioned his biggest regret was not joining the military to test himself. Like he wished he could have tested himself through that. And so it all was always in the back of my mind, like, hey, I think I want to do this. Like for whatever reason, I probably made it a bigger deal than my dad even meant it to be, you know?
Yeah.
I'm sure if we had a conversation, he's like, I don't even remember saying that, you know? But yeah, so it was in the back of my mind, but I did not know what a Army Ranger was. Like I think the only reference to it in my life was watching The Breakfast Club and listening to Judd Nelson sing, I want to be an airborne ranger. And he's running through the halls, you know? So I didn't really have a concept of it. It wasn't until I went into the recruiting office and which is we'll get into that story if you want to hear it. But I saw a poster of it on the wall and it was these dudes all, you know, camoed up. And they're fast roping on the rope and they're in the water on a Zodiac all blacked out. And when I got in there, I saw that poster. I was like, hey man, I want to do that. Like, what's that? You know, I want to do that. Of course, they gave me, hey, you're too small for that. No, that's too tough. You won't do it. And so I walked out and they ran out in the parking lot. They're like, fine, we'll give you a contract. But remember, I told you it was hard. So that was my introduction. That's how I did it. It was just, I wanted to do that. So.
Gotcha. And I've noticed too, correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like the marketing for special forces, all of the pictures that you see, you know, of Rangers or SEALs, it's very enticing, especially for a young man when they see that. Did you kind of feel that way too? Like right when you saw that poster?
100%. And like, when I think back to me even telling that story, it's like, now that I've worked with boats, it's like, dude, they don't tell you, you got to carry that thing. They'll tell you how heavy it is.
Yeah.
That position where your back is like leaned out on it is so like uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like they don't go through, or if having paddled on a large Zodiac like if you've paddled any boat, the stress of on your, it's a nightmare. It's not what you want to do. You know, last thing you want to be doing in any combat ops for me personally is be in the water. Like I hate being in the water. It means you're going to get wet. You're going to get uncomfortable. You know, you're going to get sand or mud. It's just, yeah. But yeah. And when you're naive and you're new to it, you're like, that looks cool. You know, and some of it was jumping out of planes was cool. Fast roping out of helicopters onto buildings. Cool. Definitely cool. But other parts of it, you forget, right? Like, hey, plugging the boat everywhere, getting in the water when it's cold. It's never what you think, right? You think you're going to get in the water during the summer. Nope.
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 Yeah. Was this kind of a pipe dream? So what I mean by that, you go in there, you point to that poster, you say, I want to do this. Go in the parking lot, they come out and, you know, you have your contract signed. After you realize what you were getting into, were you like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just signed up for this. This is almost unreal. Or did that ever happen for you?
So I guess the best way to answer it is before that, I had gone to a high school that offered a trade. So I had taken design and construction as part of my curriculum, and I was able to land a job doing fire sprinkler design. And I was pretty good at it, and I'd elevated myself pretty quickly within the company I was working with. So I was doing it for about a year. I didn't join right out of high school. I had my son, and I was trying to take care of everything and, you know, provide. But one day, like, just, I don't know why, I went, and my office had like a large window off to the side. So as I was designing, I looked out my window to see the shop, and this guy, George, was out there, and he's an older guy. He's in his 60s, and he's like out there, like kind of hobbling around. He had been a fitter, so he had some injuries, and he's cutting pipe. And I don't know. I just looked out there and I saw him doing that. And I realized, like, dude, I'm 20 and I could be doing, like, that's it. This is what I'm going to do. This is my life. And it freaked me out. Like, I don't know, looking at him, I'm sure he was happy with what he was doing, or maybe he wasn't, I can't say for sure, but looking at that and seeing like that life, right? Like, here's me, the young side, him, the old side. And I was like, no way. I don't have any stories. I don't have any experience. I was like, no. And then I thought about wanting to join the military, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go do it. I left on my lunch that day, and I joined that day at lunch.
Wow.
I came back, and it was just that moment of like, you know what? I wanted to do this. And it's like, if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. And it was just, I had that moment of clarity, but the fear of it probably didn't sink in until I got to like basic training and I was there. Everything else, because there was a holding period for 2 weeks. You're in a holding area.
Yeah.
I was at 30th AG, and even that was okay. It wasn't too weird. You know, they shave your head, give you all the shots. But it wasn't until I got to basic where I was like, oh shoot, like this is real. Like I got to get through this to get to my dream. But I also had that naive thought process when you're young, right? Like, I'm invincible. Of course I'm going to do it, you know? And I had committed, which is a whole other topic, right? Like, maybe you've been there too with firefighting, right? Like, once I made a commitment to something, it was like I was all in, and I felt like I couldn't come back home empty-handed. You know, it was like, there's no way. Like, I'm not letting my family down. I'm not letting myself down. Like, I'm 100% all in, which means I've got to go hard and get this done, or something else has to happen. Like, I got to break a leg, or, you know what I mean? I was just like, I'm not quitting. I got to do this. I said I would.
Yeah. Awesome. And you must have been, you know, in pretty good shape with all the sports that you had played through high school. But everyone knows the, you know, crazy physical distress that you're under, you know, different type of special forces school. So can you kind of expand on what your physical prep looked like going into basic or before Army Ranger school?
So back then, I didn't have the knowledge, right? Like, you couldn't jump on the internet as readily and look up like fitness stuff or do anything.
Yeah.
But unbeknownst to me, I was already doing a lot of things that I think contributed to my success. One of them was I started running like harder. I was doing hills. So I lived in an area that was real hilly. So I was like, I'm going to run hills. I didn't even know that this was going to benefit me, but I just picked something I hated doing. And I figured, hey, they're going to put me through stuff I'm not going to like. So I'm going to do what I don't like doing right now to kind of, I couldn't have even told you that this is what I meant to do. It just clicked in my head. I'm like, I'm going to run hills all day. And I probably overtrained, like not recognizing, but I was just running these hills to feel completely miserable. And that was my way of training, on top of like, I was doing push-ups because I know how to do a lot of push-ups and pull-ups.
Yeah.
And on my runs, I didn't know it, but in my head, that's why I like running, because you're just dealing with quitting constantly in your mind. And so I was just kind of talking myself through it as I would run. I'd be like, all right, what's it going to look like? How's it going to be? And I was envisioning myself as a Ranger. Didn't know I was doing that on purpose. Didn't follow anybody. It was just, that's all I had at the time. I had quit my job. Like, I didn't have anything going for me. I was going through issues with my son's mom. So that was kind of off the table. And so I didn't have that. So there was literally no distractions. It was like, either I succeed at this or I have nothing. So all my eggs were in one basket, and it was up to me. So that's how the thought process was. And that was a bigger part of my training than the physical, but the physical is what gave me the confidence to rely on, like, okay, the physical is not going to stop me. Am I going to have the intestinal fortitude? Is my mind going to be right?
Yeah.
when things don't work correctly or don't go my way? Like, am I going to be able to stick it out? And I was very grateful that I did a lot of those hard runs, late night runs. Like, I would surprise myself and be like, I'm gonna go run at 11, 11 a.m. Like, I'm just gonna go for it, or 11 p.m. at night, and like running in the dark, which was huge for me because, I won't say I was scared. I wasn't as comfortable in the dark as I've learned to be now.
Yeah. Right. Right.
So,
All this running that you're talking about, was this before just Ranger School, or is this before you even started basic training?
even before I started basic, I wanted to get into it and get used to it. I will say the one thing that was the hardest is if you've never road marched or put a ruck on your back, like that hit me hard.
Brutal.
It's brutal. And I didn't do any of that because I didn't know any better. I didn't put anything on my back. I didn't get used to it. And it was brutal, but I think I was conditioned enough to get through it and then, learn.
Gotcha. And so you make it through basic training. You have Ranger School coming up. Was there anything at that point you're worried about as far as Ranger School?
Definitely. Mostly because you hear a lot of like all the rumors. Everyone's talking about how tough it is to be a Ranger. And granted, I had no clue, right? I had no idea of what the training consisted of. I didn't really look into it like I should have. I think I would have been better prepared. But luckily for me, during basic, I had my drill instructor was a Ranger. So he would take us after like regular PT or, forced stuff. And he would pull all the guys with Ranger contracts, which is what I had, aside. And he'd smoke, like when I say smoke, it's military word for like, he would just work us out to the point of like vomit or like where you're just like totally done. And then he would give us like I loved hearing guys that had been there talk, and he had been there and he was like, you ain't doing this for you. You got to make sure your brothers come back. And, he'd give us these speeches. I was like, hell yeah. And it would pump me up. So he'd tear us down just to pump us back up. And I was all in, and I really looked up to him. So it was good for me. And I felt like I was prepared, even though I probably wasn't. It made me feel more prepared that I had put a little extra effort in.
Awesome. And so it's day one, and you show up at Fort Benning, ready to start Ranger School. Can you tell us what was going through your head the second you showed up there?
Yeah, all right. So I had graduated airborne school, and you wait outside of airborne school, and the Rangers show up. They run down from the training area where the RIP program, which was the Ranger Indoctrination Program. Now it's called RASP, Ranger Assessment Selection Program. But they run down from there, which is, I don't know, maybe a mile, 2 miles from where airborne is. And then they come in and they call it a shark attack. Like they just come and they just rip on you. They're like, why are you wearing that shirt? Where's your gear? Get all your stuff. Let's go. And you have all your duffel bags. You have all your gear, whatever you have. And you're in boots, you're in your uniform, and you have to get all your stuff and carry it there. So like I'm running with my bags and you're trying to run and keep pace. And like that hit me hard because like some people quit right then and there. Like there was a couple people that just didn't want to do it. They tried going and they're dragging stuff and they were falling out. But yeah, right away it hit me that I was like, whoa, like it was tough. When we got there, I was already tired and I was winded. My mind started playing tricks like, dude, like that was like the first hour. I was like, man, what the heck? Like I wasn't prepared for that. And yeah, I think early on watching guys kind of like, it's crazy because you can see fear right away. Like guys are scared, they're terrified. They're like, oh my God. And they're like looking around. And that first day is relentless. Like they're just on you nonstop. Like, telling you, one guy's telling you to do this, another guy's telling you to do the opposite, and you're just like, what? And but at the same time, I was kind of looking around and I was like, you know what, I'm not gonna quit. Like, who quits on day one, bro? Like, I'm not doing that. I don't even know what it's about yet. Like, I was like, I gotta get past this. I want to see. There was a genuine sense of curiosity, and also like, I'm not gonna let anybody make me quit. Like, it just didn't seem fathomable at the time.
Wow. And I've seen, lots of videos in the past of Ranger School. And I remember they were showing the beginning. I can't remember the term that it was, but everyone was in this large pit. And I think they were doing log PT. And there was people run into the side of the pit, vomiting like left and right, and it was showing all these people quitting. Did that
Yeah.
happen to you? I heard you say some people quit right away, but is it just like people dropping like flies in the beginning?
So I think early on, some of the younger guys that it was a pipe dream too, right? That they were like,
Right.
oh, I want to do that, that were just kind of foolish about it and not, I don't know, whatever it was. Guys that didn't really want it gave up right away. They were like, nah, I don't want to do this. Like I already know I don't want to do this. Other things that I saw with some of the guys that I was with in my basic training, because I went to RIP with a few of the guys from my basic training. We got lucky to all stick together. But one of the guys in particular, he was like already talking about like, I want to go home. Like everybody from basic training got to go home and we went to airborne school. And then after airborne school, everybody from airborne school got to go home and we had to go to RIP. So he was already like, when are we going to get vacation? Like he started talking about things that weren't relative to what we had to do next. And I think that's a big indicator. Like I didn't know it then, or maybe I did subconsciously, like, cause I kind of gravitated away from that guy. And I was hanging out with more guys that were talking about like, yo, I want to go to this unit, or I want to be a sniper after. Like I was hanging around with guys that were talking about the future in terms of what we were going to be. Not, I want to go home. I was like, I didn't join the military to go home. Like, and so those kind of people I noticed kind of just fell out early and weren't,
Got it.
I think they just weren't committed,
Gotcha. And can you give us a little bit of an overview of what the rest of Ranger School looked like?
Yeah. So early on, there's a big distinction, right? Like Ranger School is just a school. So you could have gone to like 82nd Airborne and then gone to Ranger School. I started out with a Ranger contract. So I had to go to RIP first, which was like a little mini, I think it was 3 weeks of like getting you prepared to go to a Ranger unit. And then once you get to your Ranger unit, you have to be selected from there to go to Ranger School. But the ultimate goal is if you're in a Ranger unit, you need to get your Ranger tab. You got to go to Ranger School. So early on, it was kind of nice to go through RIP early because they put you through hell before you get to your unit. There's a 12-mile road march for a certain time. They show you all the techniques. Well, maybe not all of them, but they show you a majority of the techniques that are going to be employed within your unit. They put you through early stresses. Like they're vetting you to see if you can get to Ranger Battalion because it's going to be hard there. You're not going to really have any days off. You're constantly training. You're doing rotary wing, fixed wing. You're doing CSAR stuff, preparing for casualty, evacuation, EMT stuff, like all of that. So it's always training. So they want to make sure, hey, before we invest money in you, do these guys want to be here? So that was early on. When I got to my unit, I did everything to sort of stand out in the right ways. Like I did really well in a lot of the PT tests. I was constantly talking, like just, and that, I think that helped and it didn't help. There's probably a better balance, but I was always talking, just talking shit to people constantly. Like, hey, I'm better than you, or I want to go to Ranger School before that guy. He sucks at his push-ups, or things that were true, but I wanted certain people to hear because I wanted to be tested because I wanted to go to Ranger School. Like I wanted to stand out above my peers, and it was hard, right? Because they only had so many slots, so they could only send so many people. And I was trying to fast track and get there. So yeah, they ended up selecting me. And when I went to Ranger School, we were lucky enough to go to pre-Ranger. So before you get to Ranger School, if you're coming from a Ranger battalion, they'll send you to pre-Ranger for the same reason. They don't want you to go into Ranger School with regular Army people and embarrass yourself. So they send you to pre-Ranger, and it's just a torture fest. They force feed you, like so that you have weight to lose when you go through Ranger School.
Oh my gosh.
And then they put you through land nav. They put you through like team building exercises, and then they tear you down. A lot of like PT for no reason, a lot of like mental stuff where they just leave you standing information and you're just there just to see if you have the mental, there was a lot of little things, a lot of testing, like making you do stuff all like doing like back-to-back wads and then running around and cleaning up stuff out in the sun and then bringing you into a classroom to test on, what's the cyclic rate of fire on this firearm? What are the 7 components of that? What's the Ranger Creed? And like, you're tired, you've been working out all day, you were up at 5, and now you're in this classroom They've got the heater on, and you're in there, and you're like, and they want to see who's going to stay awake, who's got the heart, So that was helpful. But yeah, first day of Ranger School, day one was, I was prepared, but it was still pretty intense, just like RIP.
Gotcha. Was there any point where you thought you were going to fail when you were in Ranger School, or any big mistakes that you made that could have led you to failing?
It crossed my mind a couple of times. I think it was the hunger and the lack of sleep. That was like the big one. I was fortunate enough to have they break you up into different platoons because there's so many people. And I had a couple of guys that I was in 1st Ranger Battalion within my group. And me and my buddy Lancaster, we were real skinny. We weren't the bigger guys. I'm not this huge, typical tall Ranger all bulked out. And he was the same. We're both 5'10", kind of just average build. And we're in there and we're losing weight quick, And what we started saying to ourselves is we'd go to first call in the morning, like for med call. And, they check your feet, check everything. Do you have any cuts, anything getting infected? How are your gums, how are your teeth and everything? And so we would just look at each other and take that moment and be like, hey, man, I don't think I can do it. He's like, I don't think I can do it. And then we'd make a deal like, hey, let's quit tomorrow. I was like, all right, first thing in the morning when we get here, right after boot check, we'll quit. And he's like, all right. And we just kind of kept that along every day. Like that was our thing. We'll quit tomorrow. And like, oh man, I want to quit today. And we're like, all right, let's make a pact. We're quitting tomorrow for sure. All right, we'll quit tomorrow. And that was kind of our mantra, right? Hey, we'll quit tomorrow. So it was kind of like saying like, hey, not today, but tomorrow for sure. And if you kept doing that, we knew we could get through it. But yeah, that was one of the times I felt like quitting was when the sleep and the hunger caught up. And I think one of the big mistakes that I kind of regret was I got recycled. And what they call recycle is you like fail a phase. So they make you do it over, which sucks because now you have to do it again. And it just adds to the amount of time you spend in Ranger School. So I got recycled because I was helping out my buddy Lancaster. And he just got lost during the night land nav course. And I was coming back. I did really well. I got all my points and I finished early. And I saw him. You're not supposed to talk to each other, but it's kind of tough, right? They give you this creed, right? You got to do anything for your Ranger brother. And then they're like, but you can't talk to him. But he was hurting. He only had 1 point. And he was running out of time. So I helped him out with some points. And in the end, we got in trouble. They figured out that his points matched my points. And so we got recycled together. And I think, yeah, that I regretted that, but then I kind of didn't, right? Like, I'm glad we both went on. It worked out. I still got, but it was kind of one of those things like, I don't know if I would have did that a second time and knowing how much it contributed to like getting held back and feeling a certain way. Like, you know what I mean? It was one of those things where like, man, that was dumb. But
when you guys got recycled back, did you have to start the whole school over or just the portion that you were in?
Just the portion we were in.
Okay.
So we had to start it all over. So in a way, it kind of, I don't want to highlight it as it was good, but I'd already been through it. So the second time I shined, like I went through like no problem. Like I was already skating through it the first time. So now it was good because it taught me how to elevate others. So I was like telling people, hey, like this, that, it's simple, or kind of like winking at people like, hey, pay attention, listen to what he's saying right here. Hey, this is important. Hey, remember that spot, like kind of things that I was kind of more aware of. Whereas when you're going through something for the first time and you're just like frantic, you're just focused on that and you can't focus out. And I was kind of glad I focused out. It helped me later on in the next phases, which it just helped me out as I went through. People were willing to work with me on leadership roles because you get leadership roles in there. You have to pass Ranger School through the leadership roles you take. So when I became like the platoon sergeant or whatever, guys were willing to work for me because I pushed them through and helped them out.
Awesome. And so you finished Ranger School. What happened next?
So when I was in Ranger School, 9/11 happened. So it was a big thing. And it was crazy because I never saw the Twin Towers. Like I didn't get to see any of that footage. I forcefully, I avoided from seeing it because when I heard about it, it seemed crazy. like at the time, and none of us believed it. We thought it was a Ranger School technique that they were trying to like get us to quit. Because at the time, you're old enough to know when someone tells you like, hey, the Twin Towers collapsed, like there was a terrorist attack and the Twin Towers fell, and they also attacked the Pentagon. I was like, no, that could never happen. I was like, and we were all talking like they should have thought of something more realistic. Like that's not real.
Yeah.
But then, you know, one of the guys had family in the Twin Towers, and yeah, when they told him, he started crying, and it kind of sunk in. And then we were like, whoa, dude, that's whoa. So right after being in Ranger Battalion, we were like ramping up to go overseas. Wow. So it was like I got out of Ranger School, and then boom, I had to like recover and then ramp up. And I say recover because I had a lot of injuries after, and I had lost a lot of weight. I went in weighing 184, and I graduated weighing 129.
129?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, they legitimately starved you.
Pretty much. And I went through one of the colder points. So like I graduated at the end of November, and then we were in, or mid-November, because we were in Afghanistan late November. So man. Yeah, it was quick. Like I got out of Ranger School, got dropped into like a leadership role, and then boom, we're in Afghanistan.
So it was you right out there. Wow.
Yeah. And I was like trying to recoup, trying to rest, trying to put weight back on, which I did. The weight came on quick. Like it was fast. Although I wish I had the knowledge I have now. Like I should have been eating better. Like I was downing burgers and barbecue like nobody's business, which is not the way to do it. Like I had some serious bowel issues after that.
I mean, I feel like after losing that much weight in Ranger School, I feel like anyone would want to eat burgers and fries and all of that.
Oh yeah. 100%. Wow. It's amazing too, because the cold will zap a lot of your weight, like because you're constantly shivering.
Yeah.
And that shivering, like I remember shivering so much that it just seemed normal. Like or like your back was always tense because you're like, you know, when you're cold and you're just like squeezing your back, you're holding your hands all tight.
Yeah.
And also I had to repair all my fingers because they were like the cold had cracked them all the way down to my knuckles. So they had a lot of cold damage, and yeah, it was crazy, dude. It was a crazy time, but also a good time.
So they sent you out and deployed you right away. Did your body recover at all?
It recovered some, and I had to do a lot of the recovery while I was in Afghanistan, which was crazy because I remember not being at peak condition, and it was a scary time for me. And I didn't feel like I could tell people that. I think it's different now. There was a couple of people I mentioned it to.
Yeah.
But they also kind of knew. Like my squad leader and my team leader at the time were both very like, hey man, just take it easy. Like focus on this, do that. We got this. But then at the same time, they were the same ones like, hurry the fuck up, like hurry up, get up here, do that. And I was like, whoa. But yeah, it had taken a toll on my body. So I was trying to recoup as I was there, and it worked out. I was just really focused on doing that. So our downtimes, I made sure I took my downtimes. I made sure I napped when I could. I worked out a lot with the guys that I trusted that had like experience working out. So it's not like today, like they've got a lot of like physical trainers now there. I've seen the new gym that they have down there. I've been there recently. So like they've got a lot more help. There's a lot more emphasis on actual PT and physical fitness. Whereas before it was like, hey man, just be hard. Yeah. So that was the training and the emphasis then. But yeah, it was scary. I was like, man, I wanted to make sure I was fit because, you know, people in battalion were monsters. It was a good time, man. I was around some of the most guys were like CIF champs in wrestling that were there. We had a guy from the USA kickboxing team. He was an Olympian. A lot of guys were cyclists, rock climbing, like just phenomenal people.
Wow. Yeah. Amazing. What would you say, you know, looking back, a Ranger that succeeds through all this versus someone that goes in and fails? What is the big determining factor of being successful versus the person that wasn't?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I can only speak for myself. I think I did well, and I saw a lot of people succeed because they hung around like-minded people that wanted to succeed. And that can happen regardless of where you're at in the military, right? Like if you're going to hang out with the guys that love to like drink too much and make bad decisions, eventually you're going to drink too much and make bad decisions.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I drank my fair share, and, I did some things, but I was also around people that, weren't going to let me do something really dumb, that were going to watch out for me or stop me from doing something dumb. And at the same time, there was an emphasis within the group I was with to be the best Ranger you could be, right? So we were just committed on that. And a lot of us were already talking about going, higher than just a Ranger. We wanted to go Special Forces, or Delta Force was always on the table, right? That's where guys wanted to go. Everybody wanted to take the long walk, as they call it. And that's just where my mind was. So as long as that was in the back of my mind and the people around me, we were always focused on the future. So it wasn't like we weren't interested in doing dumb things. Like, I'm not going to go marry a stripper. That just doesn't fit in with what I want to do. Or I'm not going to go get so drunk that I'm going to get a DUI or do something dumb or, cause problems downtown. I need to keep my record and everything clean so that I can achieve the next level. And that's kind of the best way, is to stay grounded, stay committed. And like with anything, have some people call it a vision board. Have an idea, like a roadmap of what you want to accomplish. What do you want to do? Like, I'm here now. What do I want to do? Like in school, okay, I'm in college. What do I want to get? Do I want a master's? Do I want this? I mean, plan it out, think about it, and then hang around people that are goal orientated. Because if you're with anybody, like if I would have hung around people that were constantly thinking about, what if I don't make it? Chances are you're not going to make it. I was only with people that thought about being the best. As a matter of fact, my squad leader at the time, who ended up leaving, and he went in and joined Delta Force, and he made it through. When he came back, we were drinking at a bar, and I forget who it was. Some guy walked up to him, and he's like, "Weren't you worried? Like, at the time, they weren't letting you come back to Ranger Battalion. Like, they were having a hard time with retention. So a lot of guys in Ranger Battalion were wanting to leave and go to Delta Force. So they were like trying to discourage them, because we needed leaders to stay. And they're like, well, if you don't make it, you can't come back. We'll send you to a regular unit." And they were like, no one wants to go to a regular unit, So it was a big discouragement. So this guy was like, hey, what were you going to do if you didn't make it? And I remember him. He was such a cool guy. He took his shot, drank some of his Guinness, and he turned around. He's like, that's why you'll never be Delta. That's why you'll never be like me. And that's why you'll never be the best. Wow. And I was like, what? And the guy was like, what do you mean, or whatever? And he didn't say any more, but I got it. I knew what he meant. He's like, because you're doubting yourself, because you're already thinking of the what if I don't, instead of I know I am. And it just stuck with me in my head. And I was like, dude, he's right. He's right.
Wow.
That's the mentality.
It's like burn the ships type of mentality. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
That is amazing. Wow.
Or like, have you ever seen, I think it's Gattaca, where he has like a twin brother who's had every serum, every benefit. So physically he's more fit. And they take this swim, and he beats him on the swim. And he's like, why? How did you beat me? And he's like, because I never planned on coming back. I swam.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And I was like, yeah, that's a mental game. You're right. Like, yeah.
Wow. I'm going to have to write that down. Whenever I hear good quotes, even, on the podcast, I have to write it down after. So I'm going to write that one, that little story down from you.
Yeah. I love, well, if I have the time, I'd like to share one more, because it was a pinnacle thing about quitting.
Please do.
When I was in Ranger School, there was a guy, we had gotten lost, and we were doing like trying to get to our point to do a raid. And this guy that was in charge at the time, he was leading he was like our pace man. He was leading from the front, and he was from Ranger Battalion. He was a big guy. I looked up to him because he was such a big dude, and he was killing it, right? And I think that day he just lost it mentally, because we got stuck through all these thickets and everything. So we were getting cut up, and we were getting thorns in us. And it was because we were following a creek bed. So where the water source is, that's where the vegetation is thickest. And we were just lost. And we had been lost for a long time, like 4 hours at night, and we were tired. It was like 2 a.m. And he just sat down. And like, I bumped into him, like, hey, what are you doing? He's like, I quit. I'm like, what do you mean you quit? He's like, I'm done. I can't go anymore. And I was like, what? I'm like, dude, you got to get up. Anyhow, long story short, he got up, but then I realized, I'm like, you can't quit. Like, he still had to walk out with us. They just took him and put him in the back. And then they gave me the compass, and they gave me a point guy who was counting my steps. And we got out eventually, not easily. We just got out eventually. Yeah. But like, I remember seeing him like walking to the truck to go back to the barracks, and he had his head down. And I was just like, dude, like, what was the point in quitting? He still walked out with us. Like, you know what I mean? And I think about that in life. Like, even if I wanted to quit right now, let's say I was getting audited by the IRS and things got terribly wrong and I was losing my house or whatever, like, I still have to work or survive, or, you know what I mean? So it was like, I just learned right then and there when I saw it, I was like, dude, what's the point in quitting? You still have to move on. You still have to continue. So I don't know. It was just a good point for me when I saw that. I was like, well, now I know I'm never going to quit, because
wow,
you still have to walk out of whatever you're in, right?
Wow. Your perception of life must have changed so much after you went through that.
Yeah. I mean, I think it got me through a lot, right? Because after I got out, I got sick. I had to have like kidney transplant. Like, there was a lot of things after that happened, divorce. I didn't have any money. Like, there was a point where I was like living in a garage. I had nothing. I had a bed on the floor and a little cooler that I would put ice in. And it was like crazy. And it was all too because of lack of prep, right? Got out of the military. I didn't save money like I should have. I didn't have a plan when I got out. I only knew that I wanted to get out, get my degree, and go back in as an officer. But then once I was sick and I realized I was losing kidney function, it was like I couldn't go back. So that was hard to deal with. That was that moment, right? Where it was
Wow.
like, do I quit? It was like, that was my whole dream. Wanted to go and just move up in the echelons. And I, like yourself, like if you made your life about, hey, I want to be a firefighter. And then someone says, hey, you lose your leg or an arm or something, or you're paralyzed, and you're like, what now? Like, that was the only dream I ever had. That was all I wanted to be. And someone took it from me. Yeah. How do you deal with that mental? And so I think that idea of not quitting and like having been through hardship, going, okay, this is just another obstacle. This isn't a time to quit. This is a time to excel and overcome. So yeah, I think that had I not gone through all of that, I don't know where I would have been with dealing with that,
Man, that's a crazy story. Wow.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing all that though.
Oh, of course.
Are you still involved in the Special Forces community?
I am. I do a lot. Like right now I have friends that are involved with a group called Gallant Few. So we do a lot of things like the Ranger Run. They have like barbecues, get-togethers, and a lot of the money we generate from that, or the community that we generate from that, like, you know what I mean? Like getting people to come in. We raise money for like the kids, for fallen soldiers, for anybody in Spec Ops. We'll raise money for their education, things like that. So I stay involved as much as I can, and I get involved with a lot of different organizations, because I've noticed like a good friend of mine has this group called WHOA. It's WHOA, Wounded Heroes of America. And like, he doesn't focus on special operations, but he has a lot of guys that are from special ops in there. So I kind of just reach out and I keep in touch. And anytime I see something that looks interesting, I reach out. I give them a call. I'm like, hey, what are you looking for? What can I do? I try to donate my time, money, whatever, I have available, I will do. And it just, I don't know, it's a good way to stay, 1, humble, 2, connected, and 3, to just keep yourself in service. You know what I mean? Which is a good thing. Like I found anytime I'm in service, I learn more than I give. You know what I mean? So,
awesome, man. Awesome. Yeah. Well, Alex, this is the last part of the show where I'm going to give you the floor for a few minutes. Sure. Any advice for someone that is looking to become a Ranger, or just to compete at the highest level possible, whether this is in life, at work, whatever it may be?
Wow. Yeah, I think, I think one, if you're already on that path, then you're already halfway there with your mindset, right? You're already looking into it. I think a big component that I didn't have at the time, or that I unknowingly did, was like, prep yourself, prep. You might want to read up on like what it takes to be a SEAL, what it takes to be a Ranger, but that's always going to be one person's perspective. It could be completely different to another. You and I could be put in a dark room, locked in it, and we're going to have different thoughts about what it was like. So it's all experiential, right? You can never tell someone what a WOD meant to you in CrossFit, right? It's like, hey, I deal with my own struggles, like it could be different for everyone else. My pain is doing the ladder on heavy weights, but I got to a weight that whatever. My pain was the run. So be very like, it's good to read about it and look into it, but I would say for the most part, just get yourself mentally ready. Like, put yourself through some hardship. Do the things that are tough for you. Focus on those. What's hard for you? Is it hard for you to do X, Y, and Z? Then do those more often so you can be prepared for how you handle quitting or wanting to quit, or how you handle adversity. Be prepared, right? Always do an AAR, they call it in the military, an after action review. Do a workout and then look at yourself. What worked? What didn't work? What can I do better? Having that mindset is going to prep you for what you need to do to be the best you can be and what you want to accomplish when you're there, right? Have a vision. Okay, I want to achieve this level. I want to be with this unit within whatever. And then also reach out to people like, you know, like yourself, maybe listen to podcasts like this. If you can get in contact with guys who have been in there, talk to them as much as you can, see what worked for them, listen to what they have to say, and then apply it to what works for you, right? Not everything's going to land. Not everything I say will make sense to somebody, but whatever does, write it down, keep track of it. And yeah, just preparation and visualization, I would say, are probably key, right?
Love it. Love it. Awesome, man. All righty, everyone. Thank you for listening to the Mission Driven Made podcast. If you found value in this, please subscribe and leave a 5-star review. I'm also really excited to announce I have a book that's going to be coming out in the near future, so please stay tuned for that. Alex, thank you for bringing so much value to all the listeners today. Until next time, everyone, stay mission driven. Boom.